When Raven first got sick, we switched her from raw to a ketogenic diet, which is basically just a tweaked raw diet that contains a little more fat. Now she eats a home-cooked diet, with the exception that she does get raw bones for calcium. So I guess you could say it's a mix of home-cooked and raw. And then we have Rush, who is our 3-year-old bully, and he is a very, very healthy dog. He eats just regular old prey model raw. So today I thought I'd do a video with a quick introduction about the 3 diets: prey model raw, keto, and home cooked. So if you caught our last video, one of the things that we recommended is that you research a better diet for your dog. This is so important. And the reason is that if you're going to give your dog a shot at fighting chronic illness, whether it's cancer or diabetes or even allergies, you have to give their body what it needs. I read a quote once, and I'm not really sure who the author is, but it says that every time we eat or drink is a chance to either feed disease or fight it. So keep that in mind while I talk about why you need to reevaluate your dog's diet. So there are a couple problems that we have with commercial food. And by commercial food, I mean dry food or kibble that you buy in the store, or even wet food, actually. And the 2 problems that we have with it are sugar and the process of making it. So let's start with sugar. Unfortunately, there is sugar in dry food. And it doesn't matter if the food is grain-free or organic or human grade, whatever the case is. There is sugar in the form of carbohydrates. So in grain-free foods, it'll be sweet potato, pumpkin, lentils, things like that. In regular old dry food, it'll be things like corn, rice, barley. Now, cancer feeds on sugar. Like literally, cancer consumes glucose. So when you have a dog that's fighting cancer, it is essential that you completely eliminate it from the diet, because that gives you a chance to starve the cancer. The cancer has nothing to eat. It's not gonna survive. So that's the problem we have with that. We actually watched a really good video by Rodney Habib and Dr. Karen Becker. I'll post a link down below. And it's called The Unknown Sugar in Pet Food. They do a really good job at explaining how it's hidden in there, and it's there, even though you don't see it on the label, it's there. And they even go through some really popular dry food brands to show you how much sugar is in there. So after you watch this video, click the link below. It really is an eye-opener. It completely blew our mind. So unfortunately, sugar is in that food. And the reason that it's in there is because it's cheap, it makes food affordable, and it's the only way to get kibble to take form like that. So kibble is made like pasta. Think of like everything mixing in a vat, like dough, and then it's extruded. And it's the only thing that can kind of give it that consistency to be able to extrude. So that goes on to our second point, is how it's processed. And to explain this, I am going to quote Dr. Gary Richter. He was interviewed in this series called The Truth About Pet Cancer, which we watched and we recommend everyone else watches. And he says, regardless of how good the ingredients were that went in the beginning, by the time it gets down that processing line and it's been cooked and extruded at over 400 degrees, there is not only a lot of nutrition that's lost, but there's actually a lot of things that are produced chemically within that food that legitimately causes cancer. So think about that. And I know it's very unconventional and it's hard to kind of picture it, but just break out of the box for a second and think about dogs in the wild. Or think about their ancestors, the wolf. They were meant to eat meat, and kind of like only meat, and raw meat, and all of it, fur, bones, organs, That was what they are biologically made to consume. And here we are, we come up with a convenient and easy way to feed our dogs, and it's killing them. It's not what they were supposed to eat. And unfortunately, we believe it is, whether it be because a vet told us, or because you saw commercials, or because there's no law against it. Whatever the case is, I was an uneducated pet owner at one point, and that's how Raven was overweight, and it might have even contributed to her cancer. So I'm asking you guys just to stay open-minded about it and think back to the basics, right? Common sense. This is what they were supposed to eat in the wild, was raw meat and all of it, bones and organs and fur and all. And if you can be open-minded to that, I'm not saying like go shoot an animal and like feed it to your dog, but I'm saying we need to come as close as possible. We need to provide them with the things they need and eliminate the things that they don't need, because it's not doing them any good. So I hope this video can kind of explain the 3 diets that I've lined up, which is raw, keto, which is for dogs with cancer, and I will go into detail about that, and a home-cooked diet. If you're just not exactly ready to take the dive, it's still much better than the stuff that you buy in stores. Raven, can you look alive while we're filming? Because, you know, this is a channel about saving your life. So let's start with raw feeding. There are 2 schools of thought when it comes to raw. There is prey model raw, which is 80% meat, 10% bone, and 10% secreting organ. And then there is BARF, which stands for biologically appropriate raw food. And it's basically just like prey model raw, except you incorporate vegetables and some fruit. So we were big proponents of raw. We started feeding raw when we got Rush, who you'll see down here. And we started that in late 2014. I will post a link below to our website because we cover all the aspects of raw feeding. And it'll tell you what to expect, what the ratios are. You'll see some sample meals so you have an idea of what it is. And of course, post in the comments if you have any questions, because we will talk about raw all day long. So the second diet that we're going to talk about is the ketogenic diet. And the keto diet is basically a high-fat version of prey model raw. So it's 80 to 90% fat, 5% carbohydrates, and then the rest of it is lean protein. It can seem really counterintuitive to add that much fat to a diet because our own diets don't promote eating that much fat, but you have to keep in mind that dogs are very, very different from us as far as their nutritional requirements. So they use fat for energy, whereas we use carbohydrates for energy. So the reason that this diet is so effective in dogs with cancer is because of 2 things: the high fat and the low carbohydrates. So the high fat helps promote the body to create this hormone called prostaglandin, and that hormone reduces inflammation. The second part of the keto diet, the fact that it's so low in carbs, has a huge, huge benefit to cancer too. So cancer cells feed on glucose, which is sugar, which is carbohydrates. And cancer cells are programmed very differently than regular cells. They have 10 times more insulin receptors than regular healthy cells, so they can basically gorge themselves, and this is why some cancers are very, very aggressive. They have all these receptors so they can just suck all the glucose out of the bloodstream. If you think about typical dog food, there's carbs in typical dog food, whether it be corn or oatmeal or rice. Even your grain-free brands, you'll see things like sweet potatoes or regular potatoes or peas, and all of that translates to sugar. So the idea behind a ketogenic diet is that when you lower the carbohydrates, you reduce your levels of glucose, and therefore the cancer has nothing to feed on. So it puts your body into a state, what they call ketosis, and it just basically depletes all the cancer cells. You starve them to death. So if you're already feeding a raw diet, it's not that much different to tweak it into a keto diet. You just kind of have to play around with the fat content, and we will post the link below to the Keto Pet Sanctuary, which is what we use to develop Raven's meal plans. They have some samples of how you can start calculating that you're serving ketogenic meals. Or if you don't feed raw, and it sounds a little daunting for you to kind of calculate ketogenic meals on your own, there is a brand called Answers Pet Food. And Answers Pet Food is pre-made raw, but they have formulas that you can mix and match and add things to so that you can make a ketogenic diet. So whichever works for you, whichever you find more convenient, maybe you can start with the Answers until you figure out how to prep keto meals on your own, but this one has been proven to help dogs with cancer. Last but not least, we are going to talk about a home-cooked diet, which is what I currently feed Raven. So, we used to feed raw. We started back in 2014 when we got Rush. And then when Raven got sick, we switched to a ketogenic diet. We just tweaked the raw diet a little bit to be more fatty. And then May of this year, things kind of took a turn for the worse, and she just had no appetite. She was down 30 pounds from her healthy weight and just not interested in eating. But Raven's always loved table food and human food, like what dog doesn't, right? So I thought that maybe if I cooked her meat, that she would be more enticed to eat it, and she was. So we are sticking to a home-cooked diet for now. I eventually, of course, want to get her back on raw. But a home-cooked diet is a great option if some of you are skeeved out by the thought of a raw diet. And just a quick note, you should not be skeeved out because all this, this mindset that we have about salmonella and E. coli, yes, that is true for humans. Dogs are designed so that they can handle things like that, or that so their systems aren't affected by salmonella and E. coli and bacteria the way ours are. Dogs have shorter digestive tracts, and they have very, very acidic stomachs. So you do not have to worry about bacteria killing your dog when they eat raw meat. It's totally a myth. But back to a home-cooked diet. So there are a lot of recipes in that book, Dr. Dressler's Dog Cancer Survival Guide, which we talked about in our previous video. There are a ton of books that you can find online as well for home-cooked dog recipes, and I'm sure here on YouTube there are plenty of people that home cook for their dogs. The important thing when it comes to home cooking is to keep starch and sugar low. So take it easy on the fruit and take it easy on the sweet potatoes. Everything dog related seems to have like sweet potato or pumpkin, and it's great for dogs, but it is a very starchy carb. So starchy carb equals sugar. And you want to kind of keep that at bay when you are feeding a dog with cancer. So our recipes typically include different kinds of raw meat. So we try to get what's on sale, and we try to get organic, pasture-raised, grass-fed when we can, but it's not always feasible. You do the best you can. We try to get organic veggies, especially what's considered like the dirty dozen. But basically we get everything, we throw it in the slow cooker, we let it simmer on low for a couple hours, and then we feed it to her. There are things that we add for supplementation. Some of the most important things to add are calcium, because since your dog is not eating raw meaty bones, they need a source of calcium. We like to rotate our calcium sources, so we use plain old calcium citrate pills that are made for humans. We use ground eggshells, we use ground bone meal. We just like to use a variety to make sure that nothing is lacking at the end of the day. So we switch it up. When the bone meal runs out, we move to eggshell powder. When that runs out, we move to the human calcium pills. And then we add a fish or fish oil. So she doesn't mind canned sardines, which is very high in omegas, and that is a good thing to balance the food out with. And then occasionally we'll add an iodine supplement, but it's not totally necessary. But whatever recipe book you decide, there will be instructions in there to make it balanced. Now, if that sounds too overwhelming, there are shortcuts, and they are called base mixes. So one of our favorites is Dr. Harvey's Paradigm. And basically, what this is dehydrated greens. So looking at the back of the package, I see broccoli, green beans, bell peppers, cabbage. And all you do is kind of add some warm water to this, and you can rehydrate it. It's a dried product. You add some water, and it fluffs up and gets all its life back. And then you just add raw meat to it. And the great thing about this is that this has all the things that I mentioned that you should supplement. So this is really as easy as it gets, right? You add some meat, either raw or cooked. You throw in the recommended amount of this stuff, and it is 1,000 times better than a commercial dry food brand. Like, I am really happy about these premixes. I think they make it really easy for people that are kind of venturing into doing this on their own. So whether it's raw or keto or home cooked, there's definitely a better diet option out there. We hope this video was helpful to give you kind of an intro on what's what between those 3 diets, and we'll be posting detailed videos soon about the specifics to each diet. So make sure you stay tuned and subscribe so that you can catch the next one.